Repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
What's up, everybody? Happy Thursday to you. Back after it's been a minute since I've been here. And Brad Hopkins came to hang out with me today. This was my birthday present from Brad. He said, I won't see you on your birthday, but as your birthday present, the next day, I'll come and do the show with you. So thanks, man. That was nice.
I had no idea.
It's one of the nicest things I got. Thank you. I appreciate that.
How about your morbid butt? It's just another year I didn't die. What's wrong with you, man?
Well, Lucas asked me, what was the best part of your birthday? I said, I didn't die,
Good Lord.
So I didn't die. So if you're wondering if I died, no, I'm here. So if that was a question for you, I lived through another birthday. Thank you. Tyler says in the chat, happy late B-Day, Mickey. Thank you.
What did Christina do for your birthday?
It was pretty low-key. Just hung out with the family.
Yeah.
So my teenage daughter's gift was gracing us with her presence, and had my mom around. So we just hung around.
That's cool.
I've never been like, remember the time that Adrian Peterson rented a camel for his birthday and like he rode in on it and things. I've never really thought I want to rent a camel and, ride into a big room full of people. I kind of keep it low key. Maybe next year I should rent a camel and ride it. What's the biggest birthday thing you've ever done? You ever just blow it out on your birthday?
So actually, for my 40th, my wife held a big party, and it was a surprise birthday party. And a lot of people that I hadn't seen in years came, and it was great. For my 30th birthday, my ex-wife actually got me a car.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It was actually pretty cool because we went on to the was it General Jackson?
Yeah.
Yeah, we went on the General Jackson, had dinner, a bunch of friends. And as I was leaving the marina, there was this pretty little car sitting out front of me. And I remember commenting on it, like, yeah, that's a beautiful little car. And she walked up and gave me the keys. I thought, oh, that's pretty cool.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. You're a car guy.
I'm a car nut.
I would be terrified to try to buy you a car because I would think like, oh, he's already got this. This isn't a color he likes. He'd rather have something different.
Or that it won't fit.
Yeah, it won't fit.
That's a good thing there too, Joseph.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I'd already had my eye on this one, so she kind of knew.
Oh, she knew what time it was.
Yeah, and back then, it's like one of those things where you're buying your own gift, so to speak, because I was the breadwinner of sorts and making the money.
I understand.
So.
Yeah, I understand. There's a lot of breadwinners in a lot of families who essentially buy their own gifts. Yeah. So yeah,
how was Christmas?
It was good. It was good.
That's kind of weird though, because your birthday is a couple of days after Christmas.
It is
Did they
super
combine
weird.
them when you were a kid?
No. My parents never did, but everybody else did. Like my aunts and uncles would be like, "Here's a pair of pants." And the left leg is for your birthday and the right leg is for Christmas. You hear every terrible excuse for anything.
Yeah.
And the worst thing about having a birthday around Christmas is, like, say your friend has a birthday on October 12th. Well, you're in school that day. So their mom brings cupcakes and you just party down. And you see all your friends. I couldn't do anything. All my friends were gone to their grandmother's house in, Minnesota or somewhere. So I was just chilling in the crib. Lots of birthdays. A lot of lonely birthdays.
Aw.
It's okay, though. I turned out all right.
You did.
I turned out moderately all right. Titans and Texans. Titans had a terrible birthday present from the Texans a couple of weeks ago. They couldn't run the ball at all. And now they got to play him the second time in 3 weeks. And Derrick Henry, everybody spoke today, the coordinators and Derrick Henry. That's the big Thursday dump. Do you think what they fixed last week had to do with just who they were playing, the Seahawks and their personnel and their scheme as you watched that? Or did you think, oh, they were PO'd about what happened against the Texans and they took it out on the Seahawks and they'll take it out on the Texans again?
Mickey, I remember seeing some signs saying that, hey, we're coming for the Derrick. And the fact that the Titans wore the memorable Houston Oilers jerseys, whatnot, a little bit of controversy to that, playing against the Texans, of course. So it seemed like there was some more minutia about the game as the Texans came rolling into town, right? Mm-hmm. But they were still playing for something, albeit C.J. Stroud was not in the lineup. They had to go on the backup, and you know how this thing works for the backups against the Titans. They usually end up faring pretty well.
Yeah. That's a problem.
But then again, the Seahawks had a similar issue going on to where they're trying to keep their playoff hopes alive, staying lock in step with the Saints, with the Rams, all those that had 500 records at the time, trying to fight for that last wild card. So it wasn't like they were going to come in here and lay down of sorts. And the Titans had already been eliminated, so there really didn't seem to be that much expectation. But I think that what they were able to do is just be more consistent. I thought I saw a little bit more improved line play in just that they were giving more attempts to Derrick Henry to get closer to 100 yards versus the 19 that he got collectively the last time they were out. And it wasn't the best performance at quarterback. I will say that there was a noticeable difference between the last, say, 9-10 weeks when Will Levis was behind center versus Ryan Tannehill seemingly not being able to connect with, some key players of sorts. 4 attempts for DeAndre Hopkins is just not enough. Mm-hmm. Now, does that mean that they just didn't really connect during the week in practice because he did have a full week to prepare? It was just different. Things were just off. Mm-hmm. And the way the game ended just really didn't sit right with a lot of people. You only need to get a field goal, drive the length of the field to be able to kick it and tie it and take it into overtime. We've seen overtime here a number of times in Nissan Stadium. So it doesn't it's not like it's foreign territory for us, right? Right. But it just didn't play out that way. Have they fixed the things that have been problematic? Probably not, because that might be a personnel situation, right? I don't think you're going to, rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic and stop that thing from sinking any faster. But okay. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So, coming in this week, there shouldn't be any expectations for the Titans to go down to Houston and get a W because most people aren't picking you to win, especially with the season that DeMeco Ryans has been able to put together. Some extraordinary play by Devin Singletary running the football, one of the best running the football this year. C.J. Stroud has been immaculate pretty much as a rookie. Really and I think he's back in the lineup this week. So people thinking that the Titans, this almost feels like a Miami game of sorts where people are like, 14-point dogs. There's no way in the world that Tua Tagovailoa and the Cheetah are going to give it up to the Titans. So let's just go ahead and write this one off. That seems to be where Mike Vrabel's boys play their best. When
Isn't
people
that interesting?
Yeah.
We're going to have Chelsa Messinger today. And anytime they're a favorite, Brad, without fail, we'll say, okay, tell us what you think about the Titans game. They're favorites, so I'm not touching that. But if they're a dog against anybody, she's like, they're underdogs this week. That's, the Titans are a live underdog. They're always a live underdog under Vrabel. But, man, if they go into a game as 2, 3, 4, 5-point favorites, we're all sweating bullets.
Yeah, because of that expectation. Because we expect then, if you're favored to win, to go out and win the ball game. And it seems like sometimes they get out of character, especially if it's close, because you start getting that pucker effect, right?
Yeah.
You know how that works. And, this is a situation where it shouldn't exist for us, the Titans, and maybe more so for the Texans, just trying to keep their season alive, because it has been remarkable what one coach has been able to accomplish in a season, especially for a guy that's the first-time head coach, former player, obviously wore the Texans uniform, so maybe that resonates and speaks to the players, almost like Antonio Pierce in Las Vegas, what he's been able to do to lead the charge and maybe being able to be the best candidate to actually get the head coaching job since they went ahead and moved on from your boy that used to
McDaniels.
Yes, from Josh.
Boy, surely to goodness we've seen the last of that guy as a head coach anywhere ever.
I don't know. That's almost like saying that we've seen the last of Russell Wilson since he got benched.
I don't know about that.
I doubt that either.
Well, Josh McDaniels is an OC, but maybe never, not the end of that, but Josh McDaniels is a head coach. I mean, he's still a young guy, but this is his second opportunity, and both of them have ended poorly.
Sometimes you're just better served in the rear with the gear, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
You can leave more of an impression and have more of an influence if you can stay in your lane. Mm-hmm. And being the guy that is directing traffic, so to speak, sometimes that could be too much, and you might not be able to do that as fluid as you would in the things that you're best at doing, which is calling plays, helping develop quarterbacks, developing an offense. But when it comes to managing a clock, having a relationship with both sides of the football, which is what head coaches have to do. Mm-hmm. The first thing you have to do as a head coach is you have to take care of your side of the field. Meaning, if you're an offensive coordinator type that got a head coaching job, guess what? That offense better be humming on all cylinders for the defense to respect you.
Right.
Same thing for a defensive coach. That defense better be the best it can possibly be because that's what you do, and then the offense will fall in line because you do have such a dramatic defense that's being able to do things. So you got to be able to farm your land before you can actually farm the whole dang system.
Let's farm a phone call out. We have. Is this Fall Boy? Is that right?
That's what I heard when he told me his name.
All right. A Fall Boy has a question for Brad Hopkins. Hello, Fall Boy.
I think Brad knows me as Fall Boy.
Fall Boy.
That's on me.
We got to get Joseph's ears cleaned out. Sorry,
What's going on,
VB.
How are you, Brad?
I'm good. It's been a minute, hasn't it?
It has. I wanted to tell you, Mickey, you got a very fine gentleman sitting next to you. You might probably knew that, but he helped me do a little favor, or a big favor, for a handicapped boy several years ago, and it really helped make his day and his family's day.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
I'm eternally grateful to him for it.
Very cool.
I did have, yes, I did have a question though. I heard you a few weeks ago say, Brad, that you went into the Titans locker room and nobody knew you. Now, it made me think, did D-Hop not even know B-Hop?
Well, first off, all boy, I'm a lot older than DeAndre, so I'll give him a little bit of autonomy. And for the same situation for a lot of those young players, when I was in the league, it was almost 15, 16 years ago, so I can understand that. But I will say this: the one thing that DeAndre did was what Will Levis is feeling now. He made me feel as if he knew me.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, during the reunion weekend, DeAndre made it a point to come over to the end zone where a lot of us former players were pregame and shake my hand. He didn't have to do that.
Right.
So I can see where, and you know what, maybe that I'm going to segue into maybe some of the issues that we see with the offense, in that Will Levis is definitely dialed into where number 10 is on the football field and sometimes doesn't see other people.
Right.
It's because of that relationship that DeAndre Hopkins, that came into this team, came onto this roster with cachet. People knew who he was. And to give him the attention deserved of such a great player, it just made sense. Because I know how DeAndre Hopkins made me feel as a former player. I said, maybe we're cousins, maybe whatever. So he's literally talking to me. This is during training camp, too. So where are your people from? I said, well, my grandfather grew up in Indianapolis, from that area. I don't think he's even from that remotely. I think he might be from Florida or something like that. But the point is, we weren't related, but we did have that conversation almost as if we were, So I can appreciate the way that DeAndre makes Will Levis feel, a rookie quarterback that's really trying to get on the same page as somebody that has already made a name for himself and still playing at a very high level, mind you. Yeah. So even though DeAndre didn't know necessarily who I was from wearing the number 72 for this franchise, he acted as if he did, and I was appreciative of just the fact that he, acknowledged my presence.
Well, all the talk about, he doesn't practice, he doesn't do this, and guy's done everything this year.
Everything.
He plays in all the games. He practices. He might get a veteran rest day, but Vrabel does that for lots of those guys.
Sure, I got rest days.
Sure, I need some rest days. I'm a veteran, but he's been everything that you could ask for.
Yep.
And you see the rapport that he and Levis had. They even will be animated with each other at times. There's a mutual respect there, but he's given that respect back to a rookie quarterback.
Yep.
And this dude is a Hall of Famer.
Oh,
he's
no
going
doubt.
to be in the Hall of Fame. So it's been. He's got another year under contract here, so I look forward to seeing what he does next year. This has been a fantastic year for him. Emmett says D-Hop is a leader, especially during crunch time. So has been a leader for this team and has been a fantastic player. He's about to have 1,000 yards again. Buck Reising, I don't know if he ever had a 1,000-yard season as defensive end at his Indiana private high school, but we'll talk to Buck Reising next. We'll get his thoughts on the quarterback matchup, and can the run game bounce back against the Texans this week? And more. Buck Reising will join B-Hop, not D-Hop, B-Hop, cousin B-Hop, and Mickey next on Blaine and Mickey. Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. Thanks for hanging out with us on this Thursday. Remember Zone TV. If you want to see what Brad Hopkins is up to, just jump on Zone TV. You can see us and hang out with us. You can say hello in the F&M Bank chat. Get with us there. Also, as we've been telling everybody, just go to the App Store, download 104.5 The Zone's app, and then all your holiday travels, you can speak to guys like Buck Reising. You can just take him to grandma's house while you're celebrating, a late Christmas with her. Buck, did you have a good Christmas, man? Did Santa Claus track you down again this year?
Yeah, he tracked me down and dragged me to Titans-Seahawks on a Sunday afternoon, just as he did for the rest of us.
What a lump of coal that was in everybody's stockings. Will Levis got a lump of coal the week before, so he missed that game. But we can get into Ryan Tannehill coming up, because I know you've spoken about your thoughts on him. I even saw that on your Twitter, @BuckRising. Are we about to get Will Levis again this week? Will he return after a one-game absence, do you think?
I think things are trending in that direction, and they'll have today and tomorrow to make a determination with the head trainer Todd Torselli and Bravel and Rand and everybody else that goes into making those decisions. But right now he's talking about it's just a pain tolerance thing, and he thinks he's going to be able to manage it. And he was a full participant yesterday, which is a great sign. So I'm hopeful that if they got me with a lump of coal on Christmas Eve with Titans Seahawks, that at least C.J. Stroud versus Will Levis can be a little brighter for New Year's Eve.
It looks like C.J. Stroud trending to be back as well. I think they're saying he's in the latter stages now of the concussion protocol. I know this is something you had tweeted about and spoken about. What did you learn about Ryan Tannehill, seeing him suit up again as the Titans starting quarterback?
Oh, that it's definitely done here, and that at best it's probably an Andy Dalton type situation for him next year, where he'll go to a place that drafts a quarterback and he can be a veteran backup and try and compete for the job. Maybe start a couple of games early on before a team transitions away from him, because it kind of made me sad. He doesn't need anybody's sympathy. He's had a great career. He's financially set himself up and his family up for generations, and all of that is well and good. But for him to kind of go out that way at Nissan Stadium after years of a lot of good football, like a lot of years of good football, with Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry, especially on a good Derrick Henry day, that the thing that got you most excited about the Tannehill experience was him taking off for the first time, like meaningfully and like with intent. In a couple of these on a couple of these scrambles for critical first downs, that was about the highlight of the Ryan Tannehill experience. The rest was hospital balls, and honestly, they're lucky nobody else got hurt.
Buck, when you back up a rookie quarterback, it seems that you're delegated to being a backup quarterback. Russell Wilson will also be on the bench as well. I don't think that he'll be delegated as a backup quarterback. At some point in time, someone will see value, and he'll be a starter. Is Ryan Tannehill a starter in the NFL to you?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, are you seeing who's starting football games for NFL teams this weekend? Hell yeah.
You think the Vikings like to have him right now?
Yeah, that's actually pretty good.
Listen, the Jets coaching staff ought to be fired for not trying to get Joe Flacco. Like, if 38-year-old Flacco can do it and, do it at a high level, and I know his situation is not quite the same, but there's going to be opportunities. He's going to start games in the future, provided that he wants to continue his NFL career, and there's no indication that that's waning at all at 35 years old. I think he can still be a good football player if the surroundings are just better. He was always a little situational dependent anyway, and never more so now than at this late stage.
Looking at the Texans, Buck, it seems that there has been a lot of credit given to their rookie C.J. Stroud, but not many people are taking full look at Devin Singletary and the rushing attempts and actually just how well he's been running the football for the Texans. That's never been a problem for the Titans, but it seems that this year we might be, I guess, not the favorite when it comes to running the football versus the Texans. What do you think the problem is with us being able to run the football consistently?
Oh, that's a great question. It's just like watching Jalen Duncan, Brad, and you having played that position, it's just so hard for him out there right now. And whether it's, just consistency with hand placement and little technical things that he falls short on, or that, if it's not him, it's Skoronski. If it's not Skoronski, it's Raiden. It's just they can't seem to, as collectively as a unit, put it together well enough. Now, they were running the football well in this game, and I think more of that I don't want to say that more of it should be credited to Derek, because I thought that they blocked things up well against Seattle, and that's not the best front in the world, but they were able to get some things accomplished. But if everybody knows that Derek's getting the football and you can stop Derek on that day and try and get the Titans to beat you in a drop-back passing game, then you've won the game, because every time they try and get into a drop-back passing game, they just are overwhelmed by sacks in the second half of these games where, you know, they're either trailing or they're needing to kind of keep a grasp on this and continue to extend drives and try and play with a lead, and they're just unable to do so when they try and pass. 5 of the 6 sacks, I believe, came in the second half last week, and all 7 of them of Levis against the Texans came in the second half. It's just the offense. I know people are tired of hearing it, but it's still the same offensive line week in, week out.
I don't know why in my mind I'm looking at the Titans backfield. I see shades of Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott, meaning everybody knows that getting to Derrick Henry before that third step seems to be the way to slow down this rushing attack. But Tajay Spears seems to be more shifty, being able to maybe avoid those first couple of defenders before he then makes some plays. Now, I get it. He led the rushing charge last week with 88 yards, but it just seemed like those were a hard 88 yards to get. We didn't see any explosive plays. There wasn't anything like past 10, 20 yards after the line of scrimmage. But it does seem like Tajay Spears has been more explosive with the football in certain situations. Do you see it that way?
Well, absolutely. And he's just, listen, Derek's going to be 30 next month in January. And that Zeke Elliott is an apt comparison, because that's probably what free agency is going to look like for Derek. He'll probably go through the first wave without nobody's going to give that dude a 3-year deal if it's not Tennessee. And so it'll probably be, I think Zeke is working for 1 year, 3 and like 1.5 guaranteed right now with the Patriots at the end of his career, and that's probably what Derek's looking at, whether that's here or elsewhere. He's a smaller target, Spears, to Derek. It's easier to get lost in the shuffle. His change of direction is so sudden. He's a threat on all 3 downs. I don't think you can – I have no idea whether you can give him the kind of volume that you give Derek. I think the thing that makes Derek singular is that you can keep giving it to him over and over and over again. And to his credit, he has, again, been durable and available and out there fighting for it. But you're spot on, Brad. Like, he used to be the great Derrick Henry. He's no longer the great Derrick Henry anymore. There's still shades of it, but the 88 yards is unfortunately kind of, you don't expect it anymore. At least I don't when I go to these games.
Hanging out with our man Buck Reising, brought to you by Two Rivers Ford, home of the non-commissioned salespeople. So Derek essentially today was asked, what can be different this time when you see the Texans versus the last time? And he said, well, what was his quote? He said, well, it's definitely got to be better. I said, a lot better, really. It's got to be a lot better. 16 for 9, I think you pointed out to him in the postgame, which that's the most, I don't know. He doesn't always just seem overjoyed to speak to the media, and I don't blame him. I wouldn't be overjoyed to speak to us either. I've never quite seen him like that. Today he seemed more like himself. He was answering questions and, being candid with some. But, he's got 2 games left probably in this Titans uniform, barring something getting worked out between he and the Titans. I would imagine there's a certain chip on his shoulder, an amount of pride that we'll see come out. But no matter how much pride you have, if you're getting hit in the backfield like the Texans did repeatedly, you can't go anywhere. I just wonder how this team will respond. And, Buck, the other question would be, who's even going to play left tackle this week? Oh, my God, that's the other thing. How would you like to be the guy that got benched for Andre Dillard? Yeah.
I mean, and listen, I don't mean to sound too crass with it, but like that's the reality of the situation. Andre Dillard has been, I would argue, the most underperforming player on the team this year, and that Jalen Duncan was pulled for him is a pretty dramatic statement. So I would anticipate Duncan. I don't know anything. I haven't heard anything. On Thursday at 1:30 as we're talking about it right now. I would anticipate Duncan, but they've certainly opened the door for it. Now, Derek, I thought you talked about like playing with pride and things like that, Mickey. I thought that's what that Seahawks performance was, because he made a lot out of precious little. Because it's not like he wasn't getting contacted in the backfield and getting hit by the first defender and finding ways to either get through it or made a couple of moves. He had a little bit of a stutter step that I haven't seen Derek do. on one of those where he got a couple of yards after contact, and it's, you're just asking. You've always been able to ask Derek every week to do the impossible, and more often than not, he's been able to do it. But the situation is more impossible than it's ever been for him, and I don't know that it's fair to him to have that level of expectation for Derrick Henry at this point. If it's not been there all year, save a couple of spectacular performances. And by the way, he is still doing spectacular things. The fact that he has as many touchdown passes as Ryan Tannehill in the season is both disgusting and phenomenal for him. He's just such a weapon in so many different facets, and he gives them everything that he's got every time that he's out there. And it's why, he's still playing when a lot of these dudes, and he's healthy. He's healthier than Jeff or Amani Hooker or NWI and all these other guys who got put on injured reserve that have been out there fighting for it. But it means a great deal to him, and he wants to stay here, whether or not that ends up happening or that fans get their emotional wishes. I just don't think you can make decisions like that if you're the front office.
I think Michael Pittman Jr., maybe Calvin Ridley, these are comparable receivers, Buck, to DeAndre Hopkins. But it seems like these young quarterbacks have been able to, establish themselves early without the presence of a true dominant number one. Now, that's not to say that the Titans don't have that kind of ability, but is it more than just that? Should the Titans then be able to rely on more depth? In other words, should Treylon Burks be able to take full advantage of the double teams that DeAndre happens? Or why do you think that there may be not as much productivity here in Nashville as we see some of these other offenses that are featuring, probably the same kind of caliber receiving core?
Oh, and Treylon is just such a I just shake my head every time we talk about him because, I was texting our friend Josh Griffin, who's the manager at Tin Roof across the street from where we work, and he had sent me a picture this morning of somebody taking a Treylon Burks cardboard cutout and putting it by a dumpster to be left to rot.
Wow, dang!
And I responded just kind of with general frustrations about the experience with him because he's wide open on so many of those plays on Sunday, and just Tannehill didn't take it. I don't know. Listen, he answered questions about it afterwards. I don't think he's actively going away from Treylon Burks and stuff like that. But if you've got him behind the defensive back on a 50-50 ball down the field, and you opt for Chris Moore on a crossing pattern where he's about to get cracked and had to come out for a play and the ball popped up and incomplete, as opposed to, I don't know if Treylon makes that play or not. There's plenty of reasons to think that he might not, but that we're to the point where they're not even trying. I don't want to say that they're not trying, but that it's just not a natural thing for them to just say, oh, there it is. There's the 50-50 ball. Let's take it on a second down shot play. I think that's pretty telling about where everything is with Treylon Burks. And that's fair because he's not been out there, Brad. He's just not out there consistently enough. He's not done much with Levis. He's missed the vast majority of that time together, and so you hope that with improved protection, I think it comes down so much more to the protection than it does to the talent of the skill position players, because it's not like Detroit's got some overwhelming cast, and Jahmyr Gibbs has been an awesome rookie contributor, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is definitely a number one wide receiver, but they're not locked and loaded with the best wide receivers you've ever seen in the world. They've got an offensive line that they drafted, all five of them, organically through the organization, paid the ones that are worth paying, and put a product in front of Jared Goff that allows him to operate that offense so much more cleanly. When Levis has time, and hell, even when Tannehill had decent pockets in this game, and whether he's taking sacks or stuff like that, is he spoke about on Sunday afternoon. But I don't know how anybody can operate any kind of an offensive situation with what is currently supposed to be protecting them up front.
Yeah, I think getting into the playoffs, Buck, is the one thing the Titans fans would want to have most. If they could get that under their Christmas tree every single winter, I'm sure they would like that. And to do that, you just got to win the division, basically. That fourth seed is guaranteed to you. I know a wild card does help sometimes, but being able to just win the division seems to be something that would be an easier route to getting into the playoffs. I wonder if the Titans are lock in step with the improvements that the other three teams in the division are making. We see quarterback play being changed. with young guys. Trevor Lawrence is actually the oldest quarterback in the division, basically, but he's still only been here for a couple of seasons. Now, they do have the luxury of a rushing attack, whether it's Travis Etienne, Devin Singletary, Jonathan Taylor. We've seen our guys here in the backfield, but for the most part, I wonder if the Titans are keeping up with the pace of the other three teams in the division. What do you think?
Oh, hell no. I mean, they're
Well, take your time when you think about it, though, before you say something.
Well, Brad, I'm there every Sunday. You watch them every Sunday, and I have seen, after I don't get to watch the other AFC South teams live, obviously, because I'm doing the press box thing, and I'll go back and watch either TV copy or tape afterwards. But it's not just like where those other teams are with draft capital or hitting on quarterbacks, and Richardson is, of course, a complete unknown, having been knocked out in Week 5. But Shane Steichen is out there making a case for Coach of the Year with what he's been able to put together with Gardner Minshew. I know Atlanta was a hideous outing for them, and Minshew played a poor game. But it's not just that. The Titans have the second most cap space in football. The Texans, I believe, have the fourth most, and the Colts have the fifth most.
Yeah.
So their advantages heading into an offseason where they can try and make up this ground, they are not in that much better of a position than the teams who are already ahead of them. And while I think that a lot of stuff on that roster is still salvageable, and I think that Mike Vrabel's been doing so much with so little for so long that we are just to the point where he cannot, there is no magic really to be worked at this point with what's left of the roster, either because of poor personnel decisions or drafting, or the fact that we're just doing December football now and the bodies are falling apart all over the place, as evidenced by the number of backup quarterbacks that are playing. They have plenty of work cut out for them. The division has been easier to win in years past. It is no longer the case. This is going to be one of the most hotly contested divisions in football for the foreseeable future.
Buck Reising. Hey, on the way out, just because we've talked a lot about the quarterback play and what you saw from Tannehill, and let's say that Will Levis starts this week and maybe late in the game something gets tweaked and they finish the game however they finish it. Last game of the season, who are you starting at quarterback if Levis can't go?
Tannehill.
Okay.
I mean, you want to win.
So
they want to try to win anyway. They may not, but
So then what do they do with Malik?
They give him an opportunity to compete with whatever veteran they bring in the offseason, and if he doesn't win that competition, then you probably cut him.
Well, him not
hope that somebody trades for him. I mean, we're talking about viability of backup quarterbacks, but Brad, I'm watching too many, and both of you guys, I'm watching too many backup quarterbacks around the league come in and find ways to win games. And I'm not making any final determinations about Malik Willis or who he is or the player that he'll be, however long his NFL career lasts. But what I see when Malik is out there is considerable difference between whether it's Jake Browning or Dobbs, who has now, kind of ceded the spotlight for performance reasons all over the place. 38-year-old Joe Flacco is one of the most impressive stories in football, and he's playing great at this point. Your backup quarterback has never mattered more, and the guy has so much more work to do and can do it, by the way. He'll have training camp. He'll compete. He made considerable strides in training camp and stuff like that. If it's an emotional decision, I would rather than play Malik because I think he deserves more opportunities. It's a terrible situation that he's been dropped.
You know what, Buck? I'm glad that you said that because it does make the backup quarterback just that much more valuable in today's climate because we do see concussion protocol. We see a lot of injuries happening to starters to where if you've got momentum on your squad, you want to be able to keep that momentum up with the guy coming off the bench. Now, the backup quarterback has always been the most popular guy on the team, because he's not playing out there consistently enough for us to poke holes into his game.
Right.
But it does show in today's climate that you need to have a guy that can come in that you can believe in and that the offense has confidence in. So I think the number 2 is way more valuable than they've ever been.
Yeah, I mean, we're playing 17 regular season games right now. I would bet money that at some point in whether it's the near future or the far future, that they move to 18 and backups are just going to get more and more valuable.
That is very true. Bucky, hey, man, great stuff today. Thank you for the time, and we will talk to you. I'll talk to you Sunday morning on the Lee Company Countdown to Kickoff as the Titans go down to Houston and look to get some payback from a couple of weeks ago.
See you, Buck.
I'll be there, gentlemen. A pleasure as always.
Yes, sir. Buck Rising. Same time typically each and every week. You can catch him on the Blaine and Mickey Show. Again, brought to you by our friends at Two Rivers Ford at Buck Rising. You can follow him there for all the latest tweets and whatnot. All right, when we come back, let's get into this. B-Hop and I hadn't had a chance to break this down. The Henry Spears carry split and what you do and what it's like to have a player who's a legend and maybe some guy who's encroaching into his territory a little bit and his play time and his snap count and all those kind of things. We'll get into that. Also, if you want to join the discussion, you can, 615-737-1045. Should Spears be getting more of the carries looking towards the future over these last couple of games, or do you want to see the King tote the rock every time he can as long as he's in the two-tone blue? Let us know. Again, 615-737-1045. Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. Brad Hopkins hanging out for the Hitman today. Appreciate that. Trying to figure out what do the Titans need to do for these final two games at running back. You've got Derrick Henry, the legend, who could very well be playing his last two games in a Titans uniform, and his contract is up. That's what that's based on. He's at 972 yards. He is averaging 3.9 yards per attempt. You have Tyjae Spears, who is averaging 4.7 yards per attempt. So almost a full yard more. Derrick Henry has 249 carries, which is actually not even a monumental amount for him. Now, he could easily get to 300 with a couple of big games this year, but he could also maybe not get to 300 depending on how the Titans' rushing attack looks in these final two games. Tyjae Spears has 91 carries. We'll get into our thoughts, but let's start with Jordan in Nashville, 615-737-1045, who wants to weigh in on this subject. Jordan, what would you do? You're Mike Vrabel, got a legend in the backfield, but you got a young guy that you drafted and have great hopes and expectations for. How do you balance things out for these final two games of the season?
Well, I think it works because Derek is like who he is. But I think like moving forward, I think we kind of saw it like in Dallas, how we had Ezekiel Elliott last year and Tony Pollard. And Tony Pollard kind of came out as a star, then he kind of moved away from Zeke. But then you don't really get that production there. And I think that's one of those situations where you still need a guy like Henry for Spears to kind of keep doing what he's doing, because it kind of keeps that illusion there of like what you're going to do. But I mean, that's just my input. Just let me know what you guys think.
So the conundrum for me seems to be there are two different rushing styles. Mm-hmm. Derrick Henry is not the kind of guy, in my opinion, that receives the handoff and can get to the edge. Mm-hmm. Toss sweeps, screens, that'll get him to the sideline and maybe take advantage of it that way. Derrick Henry is a sledgehammer. He's coming right down between the tackles, and if he gets to that third step, it's over. He does have the gear to switch, because even 18-wheelers can get to 100 miles an hour, right? Tajae's not that guy. More of a scat back style. I don't know how you feel about him downs 1 through 3 consistently to be able to take over a backfield, much like Tony Pollard has an issue being the bell cow, so to speak, for Dak Prescott's offense.
Right.
But it doesn't seem to me that the Titans have the kind of offensive line to push the line of scrimmage back to allow that third step for Derrick Henry consistently. Every now and then we'll see flashes of it. But Derrick Henry's the kind of guy that needs 20, 25, 26, 27 carries to then start getting momentum to be able to take over a ball game. Because after a while, even a slow drip will end up making some sort of impression. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
And after a while, you will see the dam break. But getting to that level of consistency where Derrick Henry can get that many carries and then ultimately allow the defense to just give up because they're tired of getting leaned on all the time. This front five, front six, even receivers blocking on the edge, to me, doesn't allow Derrick the kind of productivity because they're not winning the line of scrimmage consistently. They do it every now and then, but not every single play week in and week out. That's just the way I see it.
We have a TV in the studio. It's behind Brad, so Brad would have to have eyes in the back of his head to see it. But the way Blaine and I sit, we just kind of sit here, and while we talk, we may tilt our microphones. We kind of keep an eye on the TV. So the Senior Bowl practices last year were on during our show. And I kept telling him, man, this guy, Tyjae Spears from Tulane, he is so much fun to watch. Well, here he is every day. And he's got that thing where he's here, no, he's here, no, he's here, no, he's here. He's probably not, if you said you and Derek are going to race each other for 100 yards, over 100 yards, Derek, I would imagine Derek would win that race. But for 8 yards or 3 yards or 5 yards, it's a different world that they're living in. They're just different people physically. Tyjae Spears, I've used the word sudden. He's sudden. Like, he has the ball, and he's sudden to get out of the way of the 2 or 3 guys who are at his feet, which has happened a lot. They spent so much draft capital on him, a third-round pick. A couple years ago, it was Darrington Evans they spent draft capital on. A couple of years, or the year after that, it was Hassan Haskins. All while they drafted the other guys while Derrick Henry was unobjectively in his prime. More than anything, I wish they'd spent those on maybe another offensive lineman or a receiver or a cornerback. They spent a lot of draft capital on other running backs. But here we are with Tyjae Spears. And the thing about Spears, and because of our showtime, I don't necessarily get to go to practice midweek, but I get to go to all the training camp practices. And maybe we'd ask about Tajay Spears. Oh, we're going to find all these ways to use him. You know, he can catch the ball. He can run routes. We'll send him out wide. It kind of felt like it feels like almost an incomplete for how he's been used this year. I honestly thought we'd see a lot more of him. And they don't really have a receiver like him. Kyle Phillips is a little more sudden than the other big-bodied receivers they have, but he's dealt with hamstring issues. Heck, he was a healthy scratch for one game. But I honestly thought, okay, maybe they're both in the backfield. Tajay Spears goes out of the backfield because the caller had a great point. Boy, as long as Henry's out there, everybody's got to account for where he is. And maybe not with Spears. I totally get that, where it's like you can watch a Titans game with people who don't know football, and they'll go, boy, everybody hits 22 on every play. He gets all the attention. You know, was watching a game with a relative one time and who didn't know football, and she kept saying, they all hit 22 on every play. He must be really good. I said, well, he gets all the attention. So he may get more attention, but I thought, gosh, if you had some attention on Derek, motion Tajay out, the guy who has to guard him is going to have a hard time keeping up with him, at least in a short space. We just haven't seen much of that. But with 2 games left, I'd like to see Derek get 1,000 yards, and I'd like to see him get every accolade and every last clap that he can from these fans because he's earned it. But, man, Tajay Spears is probably your guy going forward. I mean, you spend a lot of capital on running. Darrington Evans isn't even in the league anymore, I don't think. Hassan Haskins got in some trouble, and he's been inactive all year, and then he went on injured reserve. I mean, he may not even be on the team next year. But for what Tajay Spears can give you, I sure wouldn't mind seeing him get at least tilt it his way for the last 2 games.
I know we're up against it, but the deficiencies up front, and I'm just pointing this at the offensive line, but Tajay makes that first guy miss because there is going to be somebody in the backfield where Derrick Henry doesn't necessarily. But if you don't think Derrick Henry still commands that presence, look at the touchdown pass that he threw to Chig. That's because the defense got sucked up.
Oh, sure.
With Derrick Henry having the ball in his hand and it left Chig wide open in the end zone. That's the kind of attention that 22 still brings.
Boy.
On the other side, maybe we talk more about shades of Eddie George and Chris Brown.
Well, let's do that because Brad Hopkins would certainly remember how that went down when another Titans legendary running back started to cede carries to an up-and-coming guy, and Chris Brown will do that. Ron Slay says, Rascal sounds like me. I love that take, Rascal, and happy belated B-Day. Ron, you rascal. 615-737-1045. You can weigh in on this. Also, need to get to this, some quotes about the left tackle position. We got a left tackle in the studio today. Really good one, multiple-time Pro Bowler. So we'll get to that with B-Hop as well. And hour number 2 of the Blaine and Mickey Show with special guest Brad Hopkins.
There are a lot of diagnoses out there, and there's a pill for everything. But not all diagnoses are accurate, and not all pills are good for you. Well, hey, it's Blaine Bishop. And when you get a diagnosis for your European auto repair, get a second opinion before you make a major decision. And Eurofix is the home of second opinions. Before you spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars on European vehicle repair from a diagnosis, go to Eurofix. It could not only save your vehicle's life, but could actually save you from a lot of stress that ruins your weekend. Life's too short, get stressed out, and dang, you're angry. Well, be happy and go to Eurofix. At Eurofix, you get a free 15-minute no-wrench inspection with an estimate at every visit. Not high-pressure sales tactics, right? Well, at Eurofix, you get a 3-year nationwide warranty and a free loaner car with every repair appointment. And at Eurofix, you never pay dealer pricing. All you have to do is go check them out. From Franklin to Hundred Oaks to Murfreesboro to Belmead and now Mount Juliet. All you have to do is just give them a call at 844-EUROFIX. That's right, 844-EUROFIX, or you can visit them online at myeurofix.com. That's myeurofix.com. But always tell them Blaine sent you.
Welcome in. It is the Thursday edition of Blaine and Mickey, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors. When trust matters, we trust Brad Hopkins to hang out for the Hitman today. He has stepped in. So we went from the defensive side of the ball to the offensive side of the ball. Really, my main question, we ended the first hour, we were talking about the mix of carries and how do you sort of dole that out between Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears. So we wanted to get some more into that as we started hour number 2. Also, Brad Hopkins, who was a multiple-time Pro Bowler and manned the starting left tackle position for over a decade for these Tennessee Titans. One of the most interesting storylines about this team since it has been the Titans is essentially the team has had 2 punters until now. It had 2 punters, Craig Hentrick and Bray Kern. Well, the other thing about this team, for the most part, in its history since becoming the Titans, and you even predated that, the Tennessee Titans or the Tennessee Oilers back to Houston, the team had you, it had Michael Roos, it had Taylor Lewan. So you could count on this team. They always had a good running back, have an all-pro caliber, Pro Bowl caliber left tackle. There were just certain things the Titans always had. And it's interesting because we talk about the running game and, gosh, should Spears be out there and get more carries because there are people hitting the guys in the back? All this comes back to the offensive line, which has been a problem now for a couple of years. And I was going to tell you this. I'll just spring it on you now. Tomorrow we need to get into New Year's resolutions for the Titans. So you got 24 hours to think of some New Year's resolutions. But I would think one of the top New Year's resolutions, and I was joking because I was writing in my notes, and just to tease a little bit for tomorrow for my resolutions, I was thinking, find next Brad Hopkins. Well, there aren't just Brad Hopkins floating around out there. Everybody'd like to have a Brad Hopkins. Everybody'd like to have a Michael Roos or Taylor Lewan in his prime, you know. But the fact that we're having to just think of creative ways to deploy the running backs because of the deficiencies of the offensive line is an interesting thing. But, man, they have got to get that fixed. And Mike Vrabel, I told you, I was teasing this. I said I'm going to read what Mike Vrabel said about the offensive line. He didn't speak today, but he was asked yesterday, and he essentially got asked about Andre Dillard. Dillard finished the game for Jalen Duncan. Jalen Duncan was a late-round pick for this team and has been starting. But he got asked Wednesday, so how does the left tackle position look this week with Jalen Duncan leaving Sunday's game and Andre Dillard finishing the game? And the question was asked about him having a wrist injury, Jalen Duncan. He said, well, I think it's too early to tell. I think Dre finished the game well, and I expect more from Jalen. So we'll kind of work through the week, and we'll see how that goes and try to come up with a decision we think is best for the team. And then everybody that's up on game day on that roster has to be ready to play. So there's a follow-up question. So was the change due to the wrist injury? He said, no. It was just, whether it's injury or performance or a decision that I made, it was, I felt like we could get more from that position.
Yeah.
So despite that he may have been banged up,
it was going to happen anyway.
It was going to happen anyway.
Yeah. I think that one thing that we're seeing this year, which is consistent with the last couple of years, is inconsistency up front because the guys just aren't playing that long together. You can throw salary cap in the mix. You can throw free agency in the mix. It's the reason why there's a lot of attrition, guys coming and going. But Bruce and I played alongside of each other for 10 years. That makes a difference.
Oh, you knew what kind of gum each other were chewing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was so much unspoken that was going on when we played because we had the consistency of, John Runyon was a draft pick, and he was my bookend for as long as he, before free agency got him, and he went to Philadelphia to finish out his career. But I say that to say the longer that these guys have to play together, the better they play as a unit. Now, that might not always be a luxury. Because a lot of times when you see a guy perform well in a certain situation and he knows there's a payday coming, the franchise does too. And whether they feel committed enough to pay him, that determines a lot. For me, I never saw free agency. In 13 seasons, 188 games that I started for this franchise, I not one time even came close to being a free agent because the year before my contract was set to expire, I got re-upped. And that was by design. So if you can find guys that you believe in, that you have value in, they tend to keep them. You know what I mean? And I really wasn't looking to get paid somewhere else. I knew we were all making good money. You know what I mean? And I didn't need to be the guy that made the most money. Now, I was blessed enough to actually be the highest paid tackle in NFL history, just like Taylor Lewan was. But you can see this franchise made the commitment on a couple of occasions to do that for a couple of guys, me and Taylor. So I think that when you look at the units as they are collectively together, it doesn't behoove them to be flipping and flopping guys up front. Now, if you feel you need to do that, there's the problem.
Yeah.
You see?
Oh, gosh, yes. I was looking at your last year was 2005 because I was trying to figure out, okay, because I knew when you got drafted. So when did Ruse take over? And your last year was 2005.
Ruse was right tackle in 05.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then switched over to left after a year. And then he played out his career, and they drafted Lawan. And Ruse hadn't played on retired, but he got hurt. So then Lawan got slid over to the left. They had a kind of a succession plan. But I looked at who else started. I think Hartwood was the center, and he was here till he got a free agent deal and left and went to Carolina. But he was still the center. But Benji and Zach were still the guards on that team.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's Benji Olsen and Zach Pillar were still the guards. Even
Zach
in
was my guard.
2005. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
Benji and Fred Miller, Benji and John Runyon. Benji been there forever. You know, Kevin Long was the center when we went to the Super Bowl.
Right.
But then I think him getting hurt or something, whatever happened with him, lend way to Justin being a guy that we relied on a lot to call the direction of the line and be the anchor, so to speak, from the middle. But for the most part, we were together as a unit playing together for a long period of time, and it just has not been the case here.
Well, they got 2 games left. Hey, I mean, there's so many parts and pieces to the offensive line discussion. When you watch those guys play, well, let me ask you this: we could do the rest of the show and all tomorrow just on offense. I have so many offensive line questions for you. At what point in your career, because you're a first-round draft pick, so for people who wonder what that means all the physical tools, all the traits. There's no question marks. Like somebody gets drafted in the 7th round, they have some question marks. Too small, too short, too slow, too something, too big, too little, whatever it is. As a first-round draft pick, that typically there aren't any of those type of questions. So you came in physically with all the advantages. How long did it take you? How many games till you thought, like, I feel like now the boat is steady in the middle of the river? How long?
I'm going to say 2 seasons.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember opening up the Houston Chronicle on many a Monday morning and reading John McClain's waxing about my performances, and there were some of them that made me want to hide under a rock.
Yeah, McClain does it all back.
Now, I will say this, Mickey. We ran the run and the shoot.
Yep.
That was Kevin Gilbride's offense. I didn't know what the run or the shoot was when I got to the Houston Oilers.
You came out of the Big Ten, man.
I came out of the Big Ten with a tight end standing next to me, maybe sometimes a fullback in the backfield. Here we got 4 wides, an empty backfield one half the time. Warren Moon's rolling the pocket right and left, trying to get this thing going. We were the greatest show on turf back then, if you think about it.
Before that was ever a thought.
With Webster Slaughter, Curtis Duncan, Ernest Gibbons, are these kind of guys, and the great Warren Moon was slinging in the bean.
Yep.
So we were, high volume kind of offense. And
he was throwing for 4,000 yards when that wasn't even a thought for people.
He was doing that in Canada.
Yes.
For goodness sake. But the point was, I had to do a lot of adjusting. But fortunately, I got drafted alongside of a Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Munchak was my left guard. Then he retired the next year, and I was then inheriting another Hall of Famer to be in Bruce Matthews. And like I said earlier, he and I played together for more games than I can remember, right? Before he retired. So I got baptized to a line that had veterans. Shoot, Bruce was already 11 years older than me. Munch was 12 years older than me. So these guys were already established.
Who is this kid they're sticking on this line?
Now, I will say this. There was a little animosity because why? In 1993 was the first year of the CBA, okay, which meant that rookies were making some change coming in.
Right.
So I automatically went from being the youngest guy on the offensive line to being the highest paid guy on the offensive line without having proven myself not one snap. Now, maybe some of that created that high expectation and more pressure on me, but it did take me a couple of seasons. We sent Warren Moon to Minnesota. Cody Carlson gets to be the starting quarterback. He gets knocked out midway through the beginning of the season. Bucky Richardson takes over, and we then go 2-14 for the year.
Yep.
And I was a part of that. We won our first game and won our last game. A lot of losing in between. A lot of struggling, a lot of suffering. But then we drafted a kid named Steve McNair in 95. And you could see the potential. He wasn't the starting quarterback for a couple of years after that. Chris Chandler was the starting quarterback, but he led us to some 8-8 seasons that showed some promise. Then the year after Steve got drafted, we drafted Eddie George. Now you start to see some seeds being planted. And when blocking for Chris Chandler, and maybe a couple of other guys, I started to gain some confidence because the offense had changed then. We then started going to more of a pro-style offense, and the adjustment wasn't near as hard for me. But it did take a couple of years for me to then gain the confidence to know that, hey, I can play with anybody out here. Mm-hmm. But also that confidence came from Munch teaching me the game of playing offensive line. He was a tremendous teacher. Yeah. You don't even know how proud I was, Mickey, to see him become the head coach, because I knew what attention to detail he had for the game and how that could translate to the offense, because he was the quote-unquote run game coordinator. Mm-hmm. You had your offensive guy, right? But Munch was responsible for getting the down and dirty yards, right? Mm-hmm. Making sure the run game was intact. So learning from him helped me essentially say, you know what? It doesn't matter who is on the other side of the ball. As long as I'm true to my technique, I'll be okay. So I just started believing in that. If I take the right steps, if I'm in the right position, if I do the right things consistently, it doesn't matter who's across from me, I will always have success. Now, it didn't always work out that way, because sometimes the guy on the other side of the football is just a bad boy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And you got to do more than just your technique. And maybe some athleticism and some smarts as I got older helped me, endure double-digit years. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, it took a while for me to be confident enough to say, you know what? I deserve to be out here. And with that just came maybe more winning, because we all then started to believe that.
Well, for this team to do more winning, they're definitely going to have to they're going to have to figure out the offensive line, and who knows how much of that will change this offseason. Could be, I mean, there's only 5 guys who start. It'll be interesting to see how many of those 5 guys return in their current positions and who they get replaced by. We can talk about all that and more. But right now, we got to get to Chelsa Messinger, right? It's bowl game season. It's you got the big semifinals coming up. You got Thursday night football tonight. 68-year-old Joe Flacco looks to keep the train rolling. We got a lot to get to with Chelsa. If you're on the phone, you can hold. We will take phone calls in the last segment. I promise you. Let's get to our buddy Chelsa Messinger next.
While you've been patiently preparing for cooler overnight temps, your home's heating system may need some prep of its own. That's where my friends at Cool Ray can come in. They're hard at work preparing thousands of Tennessee residents for the cool down with a $49 furnace tune-up. So think of your furnace tune-up like maintenance on your vehicle. We all know what can go wrong if you neglect that, right? And if this is the year you finally need to fully replace your home's heating and cooling system, Cool Ray is armed and ready for same-day or next-day installation, available on brand-new Timstar home comfort systems. Plus, they boost a 10-year parts and labor warranty on the new unit. And with the holidays just around the corner, remember some important holiday tips for your friends at Cool Ray. Like, don't put a live or artificial tree near a heating vent, and to keep your family home safe during the holidays. So schedule your $49 tune-up or any other heating, cooling, plumbing, or electrical related by visiting online at coolray.com. No phone call, no wait, no worries. You pick the date and time that works for you. That's coolray.com.
Life is busy. We could all use some extra time in our day, which is exactly why Two Rivers Ford offers mobile service. We'll bring the service to your driveway at no additional charge. Oil changes, brakes, batteries, the certified technicians at Two Rivers will perform basic maintenance on your vehicle wherever you are, so you'll have more time for moments like this. Schedule your mobile service appointment by scanning the QR code or calling Two Rivers Ford today.
105 The Zone, hanging out with Brad Hopkins. Chelsa Messinger ready to join us here on Blaine and Mickey. Brad stepping in for Blaine today, Chelsa. I know you grew up as a Titans fan in Gallatin, so I think we've had Brad on before when you've been on. So say hello to Brad Hopkins. How are you doing, Chelsa?
Good morning. Putting me on the spot, are we? You always love to test my 1997 or 2005, whatever year it was, Titans knowledge.
Yes,
luckily,
of course. Yes.
I was a big fan back then. I went to all those games. That's back when the Titans were, beating up on everybody in the AFC. I really liked the rivalry that we had with like the Steelers and the Ravens. And now we're just sitting on the sidelines and saying, well, maybe we'll get a good draft pick.
Boy.
I don't know. It could happen.
But at least Will Levis looks good.
Doesn't he? Doesn't he?
Lining.
You know what,
Because,
Chelsa? We started out the program yesterday, Blaine and I did, trying to remember some more memorable moments of the 2023 season. Blaine said that it was the Atlanta game, 4 touchdowns. DeAndre Hopkins really kind of showed out. We saw him kind of come out, his coming out party. But mine, Chelsa, was the Steelers game where it was a loss in Pittsburgh, but it didn't feel like that because of how competitive Will Levis played, and he really, made us feel good even though the game was a loss. Do you have a maybe more memorable moment, even though this was a dysfunctional year for the Titans?
I think I'm trying to think of the first couple of games that we saw Will Levis really shine. Because that Steelers game, of course, I'm trying to think. There are a couple. But that's the main thing for me. This is the Will Levis coming out year. Because other than that, what else do we have to take away from this season? The fact that maybe we will get a high draft pick. But when it comes to the quarterback position, it is so hard to find a talented quarterback who has not only the talent, but I think the mentality to succeed in the NFL. And what we've seen from Will Levis so far, I think the only knock is he's got to learn to slide and maybe not take some of those hits. But still, I think the future at least is bright. And I said this last week, look at the future of the AFC South, the quarterbacks that we will have in the next 5 years. I think we'll have some of the best quarterbacks of any division in football.
Speaking of that AFC South, everybody is 8-7, of course, but the Titans, does your inner betting genius lean one way or the other based on anybody's schedule or what's left in the season of how this AFC South will sort out at the top?
Yeah, I've kind of put my head in the sand when it comes to the AFC South. I don't even want to look at it.
Fair enough.
And I think that's the tough part about handicapping the Titans right now. Because is there really a motivation to win? Because you see them getting 4.5 against the Texans. And in a normal situation, I would say, hey, this is a divisional matchup. If the Titans are getting points, usually that's the side I'd be on, especially if Will Levis is going to play. I saw he was back at practice this week because he's a competitor. And, I've went on and on about how much I like that about him. But still, at this point in the season, I think you got to be real careful with the teams who are not committed to winning. And I don't know, you guys obviously are around the team, but at this point in the season, it does not help the Titans to win games. So you've got to be careful betting on some of these teams that actually would benefit from losing games down the stretch. So for that reason, I'm kind of off the Titans. However, Tyjae Spears has been a nice surprise as well. I think he's gone over his rushing prop in, I want to say, each of the last 2 games. He's been getting more carries, although the matchup this week is more based on the pass. The Texans are a defense that you want to pass the ball against. They're giving up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. And we saw it last week. Joe Flacco absolutely lit them up. So I think that's the prop play of the week would be looking at a receiver for the Titans. But a lot of it hinges on who the quarterback is. So until we know, I think I will not be playing anything in that game.
Fair enough. At Chelsa Messenger on Twitter, follow her there, host of The Daily Tip, hanging out with Brad Hopkins and me here on Blaine and Mickey.
I'm going to read you a quote, Chelsa, and tell me if you recognize it. I hate talking about Ryan Tannehill because I still think the national media / casual fan is too low on him. Somebody posted that back in June. Do you know who that is?
That would be me. And please reiterate the fact that that was posted in June.
I was going to ask you, have you changed your opinion?
Yes, I think so. I think we can all, in the chapter on Ryan Tannehill, he has done some good things for the Titans. And I still think people who are outside of the Titans fan base probably don't appreciate him enough, because there were some years where, we had some good teams a couple of years ago, beating, who was it, the Ravens on the road, beat the Patriots on the road, I believe. So he has done some good things for a team that was down in the dumps, offensively speaking. Before that, it was Marcus Mariota. So I do think that we need to give him his flowers and say, thank you for your time here. He's been nothing but, it seems like a nice guy. Obviously, I don't know him personally, but I don't have any ill will towards him. But definitely the low point was walking out of the stadium after that loss to the Bengals when he threw, 2 or 3 interceptions?
It was 3.
And we were the number 1 seed. So I think it's really tough for me to move on from that moment. And I think a lot of people probably still have that big Tannehill-sized hole in their heart from that game.
Yeah, I like him too. He's a good dude. Speaking of down in the dumps, I kind of wonder what BetMGM said about the Cleveland Browns and the Los Angeles Rams at the beginning of the season. Now fast forward to where they are now, possibly Joe Flacco hosting a playoff game against his former team, as Matt Stafford is in the same situation, probably going to Detroit to play their first playoff game. Did you kind of see a turnaround at any point between these two teams that really started out the season dysfunctional, Chelsa?
Well, the Rams weren't healthy to start the season. There were games where Matt Stafford, I believe, didn't start. Cooper Kupp started off the season kind of coming off an injury. And we've seen the rise of some of their young talent. I think it speaks volumes to how good of a coach Sean McVay is. When you see the talent that, was drafted in the 3rd round or later, they showed that graphic on the screen, I believe, when they played a primetime game. But from a betting standpoint, you can still get the Rams. I believe they're 35-1 to win the NFC, which means they don't even have to win the Super Bowl, just to win the NFC. And I know it's a tough road because they haven't even secured the playoffs yet, but still, we see this in sports all the time. A team will get hot at the right time and just go on a tear in the postseason. And the Rams kind of have all the pieces. They have the postseason experience. They have the veteran quarterback. They have the dependable receivers, even though Cooper Kupp has not looked super dependable. You still have Puka Nacua at least. Kyron Williams, and the run game's really going. So at 35-1, that sets you up with a nice hedging opportunity, even if they make it to the NFC Championship game. You can play the other side and still, net yourself some profit. So even though the Niners look like, the class of the NFC, 35-1 on a Rams team that is scorching hot right now, I kind of like that.
Chelsa Messinger hanging out with Brad Hopkins and Mickey Hero, Blaine and Mickey. Saturday football, Lions and Cowboys this week. Heck of a nice game for Saturday.
Yeah, and we know the narrative on the Cowboys this year. It's been play the Cowboys when they are at home. They are a perfect 7-0 this year. All the numbers for Dak Prescott have been much better across the board. Completion percentage, touchdowns, interceptions, you name it. But still, do the Lions feel like a team that deserves 6 points?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think this spread is a little too large for me, and we've seen it come down. It's already 5.5 in some spots, so clearly some money coming in on the Lions here. I think this is a stay away spot for me, but because I don't think anybody would be shocked if the Cowboys roll and once again look amazing at home, trying to right the ship after that, last second loss to the Dolphins. But still, when you look at teams across the board in the NFL that deserve 6 points, even against the best teams in the NFL, I feel like the Lions, that spread is a little disrespectful. So I don't really have a play there, but the line is maybe a little short or a little long for my liking.
You like anything about this Dolphins-Ravens game? That should at least be a lot of fun to watch, I would think.
Yeah, the injury report is not my favorite because we're seeing Tua pop up, even though he's going to play, and he's certainly practicing. Jalen Waddle might be out. I think we just saw an update within the last hour. But still, when you see the speed on both sides of the ball there, I kind of like the over. It seems like a little bit of a square play at 47, but still, even when you watch the Ravens, I think that's the first thing that stood out to me about their receivers, the speed that they have in their receiving core on some of those little crossing routes. And I haven't even mentioned Lamar Jackson yet. So I think I would consider the over there in a very meaningful game for both of those teams. Mm-hmm. So you see all the speed on the offense. Even though the Ravens have the best defense or one of the best defenses in the NFL, when you have guys who are cheat codes like Tyreek Hill, I think sometimes that can be, the trump card when it comes to those great secondaries.
Okay, so tonight's matchup between the Jets and the Browns, we saw the Browns basically resurge in their season so far to make it respectable, to say the least. The Jets have obviously had their issues, but they didn't have issues against the Bills last week. Is there anything that we need to be looking at tonight as the Jets go traveling to Cleveland?
Yeah, this is a tough one because this is the exact opposite matchup we've seen for Joe Flacco and the Browns. Everybody knows this has been a great story so far for Joe Flacco. He has put together, 300 passing yard games like it's nothing. But if you look at the 4 games he's played 3 secondaries who are in the bottom 9 at defending the pass. It is not going to be the same deal tonight against the Jets. The Jets are giving up the second fewest passing yards of any defense in the NFL. So the Joe Flacco story has been great, but be careful when betting on Joe Flacco tonight. We are seeing 97% of the money on his passing yardage prop tonight. It is the single most bet on prop over at BetMGM right now. So clearly people are buying into Joe, Mr. Elite Flacco, but be careful because the matchup could not be worse. I would lean towards the Browns, though, laying the points. It's tough when the total's, 34.5. But still, this has been the spot where the Browns have been very, very good. 7-1 overall at home this year. And in the recent stretch, 5-0 straight up and against the spread when playing at home, and 5-0 straight up and against the spread when playing as favorites in their last 5 games. So as favorites and at home, this is usually the spot where the Browns succeed. And also the playoffs on the line here. If they win, they're in. A big-time game for Cleveland.
Yeah, normally I would ask you about this Bengals-Chiefs matchup, but with Joe Burrow not being in the lineup, especially in Arrowhead, I'm not going to ask you about that. But I do want to touch on something that MGM has, and that's the current QB with the best record against the spread is Brock Purdy at 66.7%. Given the 4 interception performance that we saw last week against the Ravens, do you think that needle moves any?
On what, the MVP odds? Or
Well, I guess a record against the spread. You know, Brock Purdy obviously has had a tremendous season, to say the least. And I'm sure that that defense does help. And having Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuels, the Kudamana players to help him. I just kind of wonder if there's maybe somebody else that steps up into that current QB with the best record against the spread spot besides Brock Purdy, given the fact that he had kind of an inept game last week.
Well, against the spread is a team metric. So you named all those players. Those certainly help. And the matchup could not be better for Brock Purdy and company. Going against the Commanders secondary, who's giving up the second most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Spread's really big in that one. I believe it's 13. But this is an angry 49ers team that I would not want to bet against, especially against the secondary, who has been so bad against opposing passing attacks. If you play fantasy football, Brock Purdy could be a major play this week. And going back to that Chiefs and Bengals game, I know you weren't interested, but maybe this is finally a spot for Travis Kelce to right the ship. When it comes to matchups, the Bengals are giving up the most receiving yards to opposing tight ends. So Travis Kelce has had back-to-back games where he really hasn't put up much. So we're getting a low number on him. 62.5 receiving yards for Travis Kelce. That used to be really low for somebody who was usually lined in the 80s. So I'm expecting a desperate Chiefs team and a desperate Travis Kelce to finally put up some big numbers against a Chiefs smash spot for opposing tight ends.
The only concern I have, Chelsea, is the fact that receivers are dropping balls. Kelsey's dropping balls. There seems to be a lack of chemistry going on. And you add the pressure of going on the road and playing a 4-win team, it seems like the odds sure are in favor of the Chiefs, but could that pressure make this more of a game than we would like to see?
Well, I'm definitely not laying 7 with the Chiefs. They have not been a dependable team, especially when you're talking about that big of a number. I do think they win, but 7 is a little too much for me, especially because they have not been good against the number at home this year. 4-4 against the spread. But when you talk about those drops, I think this is a trend we've seen with some of the other guys. Kadarius Toney, this has kind of followed him around. But Travis Kelce has a larger sample size. Can we not agree that overall he is one of the best tight ends in football? Like, I think this is a small stretch where, yes, it's been frustrating, but wouldn't you look at the larger sample size and say, hey, this is a great player. Eventually he's going to get back on the right side. So I think I would still lean towards Travis Kelce there. I do think that the Chiefs can be better. I just don't think they are the championship level team that we saw last year.
Chelsa Messinger, our guest. All right, we got 3 college football games we need to ask you about before we let you go. A lot of Tennessee fans wonder your thoughts about this Iowa-Tennessee game and just how hard are you hitting the under possibly in that game?
Oh, gosh. I haven't even looked at that game. We've had so many bowl games that I'm looking at every single bowl game every single day. So
All right.
I've looked at the games for today, but what's the total in that one? It can't be very high. Let's see.
I'm doing some digging right now.
45
Tennessee's
and a half?
Tennessee's a 6-point favorite.
I think it's 6. I would like Tennessee. I'm seeing it's already moved to 6, or it's already 6.5 in some spots, or maybe it's come down because it opened at 7.5.
Oh.
So maybe some money coming in on Iowa. I have not checked the opt-outs because that's the thing about bowl season. You have to do so much homework on every single game because there's opt-outs, there are coaches moving. It's like bowl game bingo where every single game has one of these squares where it's like, oh, well, you got to, look up the backup quarterback. And that's the other thing, because I was looking at the Arizona-Oklahoma game tonight. I do think Arizona's the play. Speaking of great teams against the spread, Arizona has been one of the most profitable college football teams to bet on of any team in college football, 10-2 against the spread this year. Usually Pac-12 teams don't really get, the credit that they deserve because they're on late. People really haven't been paying attention to Arizona. But you look at Oklahoma, they're starting a backup quarterback, but it's not just any backup quarterback. This guy's a blue chip prospect with a great highlight reel, and we saw that in the USC game. Sometimes these backup quarterbacks, just because they're backups, does not mean you automatically take the other side. So I would take Arizona, but I would be cautious about it because, the game film on this prospect from Oklahoma, it's really good. But Arizona, been making people some money. I think I'd stick with them winning over Oklahoma tonight.
Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl, final thoughts before we have the biggies it'll be Monday, so we'll talk again after Monday for the next round. But your thoughts, Rose and Sugar.
Okay, so the Sugar Bowl is Texas and Washington, correct?
That is right.
I know it's in New Orleans. I'll do that game because I'm not so sure on Alabama and Michigan. I think it's very fishy that line has not moved despite the majority of the money coming in on Alabama. And doesn't that feel like the narrative play? Everybody's all over Nick Saban and this team that has really found its identity down the stretch. But the line's still remaining at 1.5. So that seems a little fishy to me.
Okay.
I'll go to the Texas and Washington game. I'll take the 4.5 with Washington. We know Texas is very good at stopping the run. We saw that in the Big 12 championship game against Oklahoma State. But this is not a Washington team that builds their offense around running the football. Of course, Michael Penix Jr., Heisman Trophy candidate, and they have probably 2 or 3 receivers that are going to play in the NFL. So that's been the weakness for Texas. Their defense in the middle of the field, their secondary has been vulnerable. So I think that Washington can take advantage. I'll take the points with Washington this year. It almost feels like they're this year's TCU. So I do think, they have a shot in this game, but I'm not so sure if they can win it all.
Yeah, the funny thing is Washington actually is the home team in this matchup, but as far as, Texas is away from Caesars Superdome, it's going to seem like a home game for the Texas Longhorns, I would assume, Chelsa.
Yeah, it's a long trip from Washington. And Texas is one of those blue chip programs too. I think they travel pretty well.
They probably
it has
go
been
anywhere,
so long since, what the running joke was. Texas is back. Everybody says it every year.
Mm-hmm.
So it finally feels like Texas is back. I would imagine there's a lot of Texas fans that go to that game.
Well, I imagine there will be for sure. Not much of a drive to get down to New Orleans from a whole lot of Texas. All right, let people know, again, all the places they can follow you and watch and consume the Daily Tip podcast.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Chelsa Messinger. You can download the podcast. Just search the Daily Tip wherever you find your podcasts, or just search BetMGM. It's usually the first thing that pops up. And once again, as always, thanks for having me.
Yes, ma'am. Chelsa, always great catching up with you. And just think, next week will be the last week of the regular season NFL games we'll be talking about. It has flown by.
See you, Chelsa.
Oh, that's kind of sad. Thanks for having me.
We'll talk to you next week. Chelsa Messinger at Chelsa Messinger, again, host of the Daily Tip. All right, when we come back, you want to squeeze in a phone call, you can do it 615-737-1045. Also, Brad Hopkins had teased at the top of the hour. We'll pay that off, talking about changing of the guard with running backs. We discussed that earlier in this hour. He lived through one of those with the Titans. How did that all go down? We'll get into that and more next. Blaine and Mickey.
Hey, this is Blaine Bishop. I'm excited to tell you about Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance, or as you may know them as TOA. TOA has 29 locations and over 100 orthopedic physicians throughout Middle and East Tennessee to take care of all your musculoskeletal needs. In addition to their orthopedic clinics and urgent care facilities, TOA offers physical therapy, hand therapy, and sports performance training for teams and individuals at their sports performance centers. And as a former professional athlete, I know how important access to expert orthopedic care is. Whether you're an athlete, active adult, or just looking to get back into living your best life, you can visit TOA online at TOA.com or call them at 1-855-NEED-TOA. 1-855-NEED-TOA.
All right, we teased you with this earlier, so we'll please you with the information here from Brad Hopkins sitting in for Blaine today. Reports out of Houston, C.J. Stroud has cleared the protocol. He will go Also, I saw this from Chris Harris of Channel 4, a really neat thing, the Music City Bowl coming up, and Maryland is going to wear Frank Wycheck's initials.
Oh, you shut your mouth.
On their helmets.
That's awesome.
Just a beautiful thing. Auburn and Maryland, of course, December 30th, the Music City Bowl. You need to go check that out. It's always first class, and it's always a fantastic game, and very classy of Maryland to do that with one of their greats, a guy that, my gosh, you knew well and played a whole lot of games with right across the river over here. But, Frankie, we love you, and we miss you, and that's very cool of Maryland to do that. So kudos to them 100%. A lot of talk earlier in this hour, Brad, about the running back position. The Titans have 2 games left. They've got a legend. His contract is up. Meanwhile, you have a guy that you spend a lot of draft capital on who's shown some explosion and maybe some ability in a different way than the incumbent guy, Derrick Henry, has. Maybe some explosive abilities to escape a guy, to make the first guy miss. And we're trying to sort out these carries for the last couple of games. And you said, well, this is definitely something I lived through with Chris Brown and Eddie George. Fans discuss this a lot. I would imagine it's an odd thing to go through in a locker room as well. And everybody knows my time is coming. Very few people get to leave on their own terms and say, hey, this is it for me. I'm going to call it quits. Most of the time, football says, I am done with you. Football does it for people. Very few times, like Jerome Bettis basically told football, oh, no, I'm standing on the stage with a Super Bowl trophy. I'm done. I'm not doing this again. Very few people get to write their own ending.
Yeah. Barry Sanders' situation rarely happens.
Yep.
A guy that leaves the game at the top of his game because, you know what, I'm just tired of doing this.
He and Jim Brown.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
But there are a core group of guys that you don't expect the Turk to come calling, regularly. We see that change happen all the time in the NFL. It's just a part of the game. I do remember Edward dealing with turf toe and maybe not performing at the level that we've seen him take over ball games over and over and over again. It was a complete luxury the years that we had 2-7 in the backfield.
Sure.
That was standing toe-to-toe with linemen as he broke the line of scrimmage, onto some, unbelievable gains and dragging players along with him. I also remember guys filling in like Chris Brown and making plays that at least kept our offense relevant. So it wasn't accepting to say, you know what, hey, Chris Brown's the next best thing, which is what some people do, you know what I mean? Looking for the next best thing. We always tend to do that, right? It's like you have to keep peaking. You have to keep peaking to keep the naysayers off of you. To plateau seems to almost be like you're losing ground, even though you're still consistent. So that's always the plight of a superstar. You've got to improve yourself every single year, regardless of how good you actually are. So I think that those were some of the pressures that Eddie was dealing with. The fact that he had carried this team for so long and for so many years, at some point in time, Father Time is undefeated, right? And the rigors of the sport catch up to you, and you're physically just not able to be as dominant as you once were. And, there's a changing of the guard. So did I think I was going to outlast Eddie George being here as a Titan? No, I didn't. But it just happened that way. Same with Steve. Steve and I left the franchise at the same time. The doors were locked on him, and he went to Baltimore. I decided to go ahead and retire that year. But you saw a changing of the guard, opening up new eras for the Vince Youngs, right, and the Chris Johnsons and these other players that came in after us. So it's inevitable. But just to experience it at that level, knowing that we had when 27 was in the backfield, everybody knew 27 was in the backfield and what was going to happen. We were coming right down between the tackles, and it's up to you to have the gumption to stop him. But at some point in time, you've got to be able to rely on other players to do that, which brings us to today. Tutu has been that guy. He has been King Henry. He has dominated the rushing title for more years than I can remember. But at some point in time, the field catches up to you. People game plan ways to take you out of the game. They understand that we can do certain things to kind of tip the balance and gain that advantage that once was a disadvantage for us, being able to slow him down. So you have to be able to reinvent yourself. How do you do that? By having other players step up. You know how we always hear Shaq talk about the others, for the attention that stars and celebrities get on the field or on the court. Those guys that play side saddle to them have to step up and win their one-on-one matchups. But what happens when they win in their one-on-one matchups and now become the focus? or even, the thing to go to because that star has like we'll bring up Traylon Burks again. Traylon should be doing a tremendous job of taking advantage of the one-on-one situations that he receives because people know where DeAndre Hopkins is on the field at all times, and you have to.
Right.
Because if you leave him one-on-one with somebody, he's going to find that crease. He's going to sit down. His catch radius is still tremendous, and he's going to make plays. So when you expect the ball to go to him, those other guys in the off-speed situations need to be able to take advantage, and sometimes they become tomorrow's stars. Mm-hmm. So it happens all the time. You got to find these guys. Trying to reinvent yourself, be less predictable, especially as a play caller, is the name of the game. Because unless you have, the power to say, hey, look, you know what we're going to do? We're going to set this ball down right here. We're going to line up everybody on this line of scrimmage, and we're going to knock you in the mouth, and we're going to get yards to gain. Not everybody has that luxury because everybody knows exactly what you're going to do. And if you can still do it, and that defense knows exactly what you're going to do, then God bless you. But for most of us, you got to find ways to counter that right-hand hook that you know is coming, or that uppercut, or the things that you know that fighter does the best. You've got to be able to counter that, or you're going to get put on the turf.
Well, and what was amazing was while Eddie George was being that guy who knew he was going to get the ball 25, 30 times a game, he knew the guys in front of him, yourself included, would knock that guy off his butt and that there was going to be some place to run. And think about that. Everybody knew it was coming. Eddie was 8 years here, never missed a game, had a lot of consistency in front of him with you and Bruce and Benji and Zach and all the guys we were talking about earlier. But just the fact that everybody knew what was coming and they couldn't stop it, now that's something.
Yeah.
Because like you said, well, everybody comes up with a plan B or everybody's going to make you prove it. It didn't matter. For 8 years, you guys just ran it down their throats with Eddie.
Real quick, because I know we're up against it. We also had a tremendous defense.
Oh, gosh.
Which meant that we had the luxury of being able to run the football. We weren't down by 2 touchdowns at any point in time. We didn't have to abandon the run game to then put points on the board. Because when that defense was getting off the field on third down consistently, we had dudes that were harassing that other quarterback and making it hard for them, getting turnovers, right? That makes a difference.
Yeah, I think we all have some ulcers left from those close games, watching those. Brad will be back tomorrow, so we'll hang out again. Lots more talk. We'll take your phone calls. We got to get ready for Titans and Texans and the Nico show as well. The Vols going to try to get it done in the Citrus Bowl against Iowa. Big Friday coming up tomorrow. Hope you will join us, but it's time for us to get out of here right now, Brad. So what do we say?
In the meantime.
In between time.
Peace.